Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
Let's not waste any time because we've only got our final guest for 45 minutes. Those minutes are going to fly by. I've said enough about him over the years. For me, he's one of the most important people in my life in terms of me waking up to and understanding what's really going on in our world. There's him, there's David Icke, and maybe one or two others. I absolutely love the man. He's a multiple New York Times best-selling author. His books are outstanding. His most recent book, which he was on to speak about with us last year, Population Control, is fantastic. Check it out. Crossfire, Our Occulted History, The Terror Conspiracy, The $1 Trillion Conspiracy, Above Top Secret. These are outstanding books, folks, and they're available on his website at jimmars.com. He's buried in Word or some other online internet program at the moment because he's up to his eyes writing his next book, but he's taken time out to speak to us today. It's an honour to welcome the great Jim Marrs back to the Richie Allen Show. Jim, my friend, welcome. How are you?
Well, thank you so much, Richie. You're just too kind.
It's an honour to have you on. What's with the new book, Jim? I know you don't like giving much away. Give us an idea of some of the themes you'll be exploring in it.
Well, actually, it's pretty simple. I'm writing about the. You ready for this? The Illuminati.
Fantastic.
Now, what is the Illuminati? And is it real? There was a real Illuminati, but is it still real? And who is in it? What are they doing? You know, and I'm trying to separate the fact from the fiction, and it's really not an easy job. But I'm going to try to tell everybody just about everything that we can know about the Illuminati. Somebody
as experienced as you, I'm not having a pop at your age, by the way, Mr. Marrs. But you're experienced.
That's all right. Go ahead. Everybody else does.
You are experienced. You've been around the block a few times. And when you sit down to write the history and the truth and the fiction behind the Illuminati, does a guy like you discover new things?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing that's driving me nuts. I'm on a very tight deadline here to get this manuscript in, and yet, I wrote about the Illuminati, superficially in my book, the Rule by Secrecy. So I thought, well, I've got a pretty good general understanding of it. This should not be any big problem. But the more you dig into it, and the more answers you find, the more questions arrive, and it's just, in fact, it's like the Illuminati itself. There's level upon level, just like unpeeling an onion. You got one, you got one level, and then you keep digging, and there's more, and there's more, and there's more.
Tell me this, Jim: are the Illuminati, whatever it is, and I have a basic understanding of it from reading you and others, are they playing a how do I say this now? Is there a mind control game going on right now on the American people with respects to the US presidential election? What's going on with that?
Of course. It's a dog and pony show. In fact, I'm reminded back during the days of the Cold War, we used to snicker at the Russians because when they had a presidential election, there would only be one candidate. You could either vote for him or not, and we all thought that was pretty funny. But then you look at today, we've got we got two candidates, but they both are run by the same people. So you can vote for Tweedledum or you can vote for Tweedledum-Dum. You're still going to get the same thing. And I think that's becoming more and more obvious to the American people. That's why today the election thing that's going on is just so rambunctious, so out of control. People understand now that, okay, you vote for a George Herbert Walker Bush, okay, and then you don't like what he's doing, so you vote for a Bill Clinton. You get the same thing. And then you don't like what Bill Clinton's doing, so you vote for a George W. Bush. And you get the same thing. Same foreign policy, same banks running everything, the same stripping of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Oh, well then, okay, so then you vote for a Obama. Whoops, wait a minute. You get the same thing. They're beginning to realize that there's really no difference because the two major political parties in the United States today are run by the same corporate elite.
They certainly are, Jim. Do you subscribe to the theory that Donald Trump is either a willing or an unconscious stalking horse for Hillary Clinton? Is that the mania? Go ahead, Jim.
That was my suspicion early on. I didn't want to say too much against Donald Trump because I really do give him due credit for bringing up some issues that probably the two parties would just as soon not even address, such as the banker control, immigration, you name it. But I was always leery of the idea, and I still am, that when it comes down to it, if the Republicans failed to name him as their candidate, I think he's likely to say, well, but the people support me, and he'll go as a third-party candidate. If that's the case, he splits the conservative vote, and Hillary Clinton will get in. That's been the traditional method for many years now. But I got to tell you, Richie, and your audience, that after listening to a fellow in Australia who has done reverse speech, and I'm not sure if you know that much about it, but reverse speech is where they'll take a recording of someone's voice, and that's their conscious speech. But when you reverse it, you can actually pick out words and phrases that from the reverse of it, which tends to come from the subconscious.
Wow.
And your subconscious cannot lie. And after listening to a series of reverse speech analysis of all the presidential candidates, almost without exception, except for Trump, they're all basically lying. They have underlying agendas. They say one thing, they actually mean something else. You know, they're being duplicitous. But when Donald Trump, when you play his reverse, his subconscious comes through, it shows that this guy's on the level. He really does want to do what's in the best interest of the United States. So I got to tell you, Richie, I've been very, very cautious and leery about Trump, but I am kind of changing my attitude a little bit.
That's very interesting. That he might think that what he's doing or what he's saying is in the best interest of the United States, but what's in the best interest of the United States as say a country or an entity or a corporate entity might not be in the best interest of the people in the country.
That's exactly true.
That's
and
another
I totally
thing.
Understand that. Yeah. But and I'll also say this, having cut my teeth early on with the presidential assassination of President Kennedy and then the assassination of Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, if he is sincere and if he is elected and if he does begin to try to bring the United States back onto a more just, equitable, democratic level, he better have some good guards around him.
If he meant it. You're absolutely right, Jim. The great Jim Mars is on the line to us. It's fantastic to have him on the programme. It's 15 minutes past the hour. There are loads of tweets and loads of comments. I'll get to as many as I possibly can. By the way, just before we move on, can you say happy birthday to a young woman in New Zealand who's listening live and is a massive fan of yours and buys your books? Her name is Zana. So say happy birthday to Zana in New Zealand, my friend.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Zana. Happy birthday to you. Many more.
He's not only good looking and a great writer, but he's got a great voice as well. Jim Mars. Jim, that was lovely. I didn't expect that. Zana will be absolutely thrilled with that. She'll be downloading the podcast later on when the live show is over. So here's a question for you now, my friend. The Illuminati, and Gary has asked me a question about the Illuminati for you, which I'll get to in a second. Gary Clucky. How are you, Gary? In fact, Gary says, does Jim think the very name of the Illuminati, the very name itself, Illuminati, is a mind game given to divert focus from an even more sinister force? Now, before you answer that, Jim, why, when the hidden hand controls all the candidates, ordinarily, they don't care who gets elected, as you quite eloquently described a few minutes ago. They don't care. Why are they so hell-bent on getting Hillary Clinton in? That's absolutely fascinating me, right? And I know you're going to have an answer on that. What about the Illuminati, Gary's question, as a mind game itself? The name itself is a play on words, a game to divert the attention from the sinister force.
Right. All right. Let me just back up here and say right now, I'm still working on this book. I don't want to give too much away.
I don't want to get
involved in a deep discussion of the Illuminati. We'll do that at some future date after this book is available. Okay, but I will say this, and here's the bottom line, and basically here's what I'm coming to. And I got an idea, Richie, that you'll agree with me. Was there a structured organization of men and some women called the Illuminati? Yes, there was. And of course, it was the Bavarian Illuminati that existed between 1776 and about 1785 when it was outlawed. Okay. Does the Bavarian Illuminati as a structured organization still exist? I'm here to say no. Okay. But here's the thing. Just like the terms fascism, communism, capitalism, okay, the Illuminati is not a structured organization. It is a theology. It is a worldview. It is a philosophy. Okay. Hillary Clinton and Dick Cheney, I'm sure if you search them, you're not going to find a card that says they're a member of the Illuminati. Okay. Dick Cheney might not even be familiar with the Bavarian Illuminati, but both those people, Clinton and Cheney, are advancing Illuminati philosophies.
Right.
The keymost philosophy of the Illuminati was the end justifies the means. In other words, you can say anything, be anything, claim to be anything, claim to be a Christian, claim to be a Jew, claim to be a Muslim, you claim to be a Democrat, claim to be a Republican, claim to be a Tory, claim to be a Labor. You can claim anything, but stick to your agenda. Okay, the end justifies the means, and nowhere did we see that carried to its most extreme than under the Nazis. Okay, the National Socialists. They, they wanted to do certain things, and if somebody was in their way, they killed them. And that is the end justifies the means. And I've always been taught that is not a legitimate, honest, and well-meaning philosophy. So what we have here is, does the Illuminati exist as a membership where that holds meetings and actually confers with each other? No, not really. Although you could argue that the Bilderbergs, pretty well imitate a Illuminati. But does the Illuminati philosophy of lies, deceit, take control, overthrow governments, does it live on? Absolutely.
Brilliant, Jim. We are going to move away from the Illuminati. Let's just briefly talk about that Hillary Clinton question. Why are those pulling the strings so desperate to get her in, Jim? Do you think? Speculate.
Well, because she has actually attended Bilderberg meetings back in the early 90s. In fact, as I understood, she was at the front door greeting people as they came in, which is a time-honored method of introducing their proteges to the membership. Okay, so she is definitely in bed with them, and they know that they can count on her to carry out every policy that they want done. Now, they also obviously control other candidates, Cruz, Bernie Sanders. They probably got a hook into every one of them, but they may fear that they don't have the same tight control that they do over Hillary, and that's why that they are moving heaven and earth to get Hillary Clinton elected. Although it's hard for me to understand how any thinking, knowledgeable person can bring themselves to vote for Hillary Clinton. Her entire career, all you have to do is just go back and look at her background. Of course, this was the problem with Obama. In 2008, everybody just thought, well, here's a nice looking black man. That'd be great to have him in as president. They didn't bother to look and see that he had nothing to recommend him for the job. Okay. He had never held a job. His background was murky. His school records are classified. His connections through his mom to the CIA were kept secret. He was briefly in the Congress, but didn't offer any kind of legislation.
Didn't do anything, Jim. He didn't do anything, so he didn't.
He didn't do anything. and now it's even worse with Hillary Clinton because she has done things, and almost all of them are bad. She got fired from her first job in the Watergate thing because they said that she was lying and misusing some of the documents. And then we have the Whitewater scandal. We got the scandal of all the people that she helped cover up. We got the Vince Foster death, which is still being in controversial circumstances, and that's because it's linked back to his connection with Hillary. We've got the emails. We've got the Benghazi incidents where it's been pretty much laid back to her that they did not even try to go and rescue this one of our ambassadors. And then about the emails, never mind about the emails, but think about this, Richie. Edward Snowden releases classified information, and they want to extradite him. And according to Dick Cheney and McCain, they want to execute him. And yet Hillary Clinton releases classified information, and she's still running for president.
Amazing. Can I ask you?
What kind of hypocrisy is this?
It's absolutely psychotic. On Snowden, on Snowden, because you brought him up, and it's brilliant that you brought him up. I interviewed several times. Why is my mind gone blank now? The brilliant gentleman, John. What's John's name? John, who writes all the health articles. He's a health writer. His name will come to me shortly. What about the idea that Snowden itself is another kind of weird story that we've been sold? That Snowden is running around the world, allegedly running from the intelligence agencies, when he didn't really reveal anything to us that we didn't already know, Jim.
That's true. That's very true. I think I was even on your program before the Edward Snowden thing came up, telling everybody that they're spying on us. We all knew this. Yeah. In fact, the only thing Snowden has actually done is simply kind of substantiate what a lot of people already knew.
That's right. And a number of our listeners, by the way, it's John Rappaport I was thinking of course. It just comes to my mind now, John Rappaport.
Right, brilliant guy, by the way.
Lovely guy, Jim, yeah. We've spoken about you. Your name has come up in conversations I've had with John. And John said, Richie, I get very suspicious when they put this guy out there, and they say that he's on the run and he's given secrets. He didn't really tell us anything that sensational, really. And he didn't. He did, of course, allegedly say very recently, Jim Snowden, which is interesting, that the whole... the whole global warming nonsense, the climate change nonsense, is a CIA mind screw. Right. What do you think of that? I mean,
you have to be careful with all of this stuff. In fact, you know what? This is again back to the fact that certain factions are so against and saying such negative things about Snowden. The same thing I see with the Republican Party leadership, and a lot of the major media now are just obviously in attack mode against Donald Trump. And this reminds me of Illuminati philosophy and theology and methodology. You go back to when they slipped in the Federal Reserve System on the American people in 1913. The bankers all came out against it and said, this is terrible. This is going to ruin the economy, blah, blah, blah. Well, everybody said, whoa, well, if the bankers are against it, then we must be for it. And so there was little opposition to pushing through the Federal Reserve System, which is nothing but a collection of private banks that are profiting from the economy of the United States, and they're neither federal nor do they have any reserves, and that is probably the foundation of a lot of our problems. But you see what I'm saying? So when they all come out and say, oh, this is terrible, then maybe you better pay attention, because that's a favorite tactic.
Absolutely,
to try to attack the very thing that they're for.
Martin Houston, I tell you what, Jim, the tweets, this is obviously a live show. And if you're just joining the program, the great Jim Marrs is on. Go to jimmars.com. On Money, Jim's $1 trillion conspiracy, which Jim kindly sent to me when I was in Spain making programs, and I still have it. I treasure it. It's a fantastic book, no pun intended with the treasure bit. It's a fantastic, an absolutely brilliant analysis of what central banking is It really is brilliant. So many tweets coming in. You're with the Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com, ACR and Fab Radio 2 here in Manchester. Verifiably the most listened to independent radio show in Europe today. It really is. Martin Houston, listening to Jim Richie, what really disturbs me about Snowden and Assange is no leaks about the paedophile rings in governments. There you go, Jim, right there.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. In fact, I think we find that that's coming right up to current events of the day. It was just a few weeks ago that the Supreme Court Justice Scalia, was found dead in his bed at this ranch down in Texas where he had slipped off to without his normal security. And it turns out that this ranch is actually the meeting place of a secret society, St. Hubert's Society, that dates back to the time of the Knights Templars and the Illuminati in Europe. And there are rumors that this has to do with the pedophile ring.
Wow.
But it's really funny because this, I know over in the UK back last year sometime there got to be a big scandal about the pedophile ring, that it was reaching to the highest levels of government and the judiciary. And then they were saying yes, and it stretches all the way over to the United States. And then the story just kind of went away. It's just kind of like, well, never mind. And then we get the Scalia death. And a few alternative sources are saying, yes, this is connected to the secret society. But then that story kind of goes away. It proves to me that there is some very, very tight control over the mass media, not only in the United States, but also in the UK and in most other countries.
Jim, are these people selected? You will know because you are a real journalist, and we've had a good laugh, me and you, over the years, laughing at mainstream news presenters and anchors and the crap that they come out with. You and I, we did a whole show on it once, I remember. It was absolutely hilarious. Right. You're a real journalist, so you know that the British Chancellor, the man who controls the money, George Osborne, released a budget. And the budget is yet another attack on the least off and the worst off in society, disabled people, sick people, and people who work very hard in very low paid jobs are going to be screwed, and essential assistance that they need is being taken away from them. Now I know, and by the way folks, I'm going to mention Jim's most recent book, by the way, is Population Control, How Corporate Owners Are Killing Us. That's his most recent book, which is absolutely outstanding. By the way, go to jimmars.com. And Jim, so it's obvious what they're doing. David has coined the term Hunger Games Society. Plunge the vast majority, it's easy for me to say, plunge the vast majority of us into absolute poverty, horrendous poverty.
Right,
which will kill us.
Have them fighting with each other. See,
and kill one
here's
another.
The difference between the Hunger Games Society and our society. In the Hunger Games Society, they would select their champions, and their champions would then go into the Hunger Games and fight each other to the death. In our society, we don't get to select champions. They have us all fighting with each other.
And Jim, so they're trying to kill us off, basically. They are. Through starving us out, through taking away social housing. In Britain used to be very proud of social housing, which are houses owned by the state, owned by the people, but reserved for people who can't afford to buy a house. So they can rent them, at a fair price and all that. They're taking all that away. Everything's been privatised. So you're convinced, aren't you, my friend, that the likes of George Osborne, David Cameron, the likes of the politicians, the powerful politicians in the United States, it's likely, Jim, that every one of these people has been compromised at some stage along the way. That there
they have to be, or they won't be allowed to get to that position.
And we're talking.
You go out and you find the most thoughtful, humane, considerate, concerned, knowledgeable man or woman that you can find that you would think would be the ideal candidate to represent you in government, and then just see how far they get. They're not going to go anywhere.
That's an amazing. I often talk to David about how do you communicate that to people whom are just beginning to wake up to what's going on. We call them the perplexed. They are where I was 10 years ago, and where you were, well, a few more years before that, when you began to realise what's going on. You know,
well, you have to be like that comedian George Carlin. He said, "You can the only way you can believe in the American dream is to be asleep."
is to be asleep. Yeah, Carlin did say that, didn't he?
Yeah,
and you can see that on YouTube. Marco was asking.
He was an old Fort Worth boy. He came from Texas.
He's one of your own, Jim. He's one of your own. Yeah, he's from the heartland. Tell me this. Marco asks on Twitter. I don't know how much time we'll spend on this because we've only got Jim for another probably just under 20 minutes before we wrap it up today. The Georgia Guidestones, Jim, and 666, which obviously is the mark of the beast. I think Marco is asking, is there a relationship between the Georgia Guidestones and satanic symbolism like 666? Do you want to make any comment on that? If not, we'll move on.
Well, I can make a quick comment. Number one, basically, no, I don't know. Okay. But number two, the Georgia Guidestones are very, very mysterious. They obviously seem to represent a foretaste of what the New World Order people want. For example, their first admonition is to maintain the human population at 500 million, okay, for the safety and security of the planet. Well, wait a minute. There's 7.5 billion of us on this planet right now. So, of course, that leads to the serious questions about what do they plan for the other 7 billion of us? And number two, who's going to decide what happens to the other 7 billion of us? So, although I think that there may not be any kind of direct connection, although we really don't know because the fellow who ordered the creation of the Georgia Guidestones used a phony name, and so it's all been very mysterious. We don't know exactly who it tracks back to, but yes, it obviously reflects the thinking of these New World Order people.
How interesting. Folks, check out jimmars.com, Jim's website. All the information on his books is there. Much more information about Jim and what he's up to. He's in the middle of writing a book about the Illuminati. We won't get into that because when the book is published, I'm sure Jim will come back on to chat to us about the book. It's 25 and a half minutes to the top of the hour. Remind me to mention something to you before we finish, Jim. We're going to finish just after 10 minutes to the top of the hour. So we've got about 15 minutes left, but I want to mention something just before we do go. It's about your broadcasting career. I have something I want to put
off
to you.
And on broadcasting.
You're off and on, but we want to put it back on. We have an idea for when your book is published and out. I've been talking to David Icke about this today, actually. And it's, of course, something that you can say absolutely that you're not interested in, but we'll leave that for a few minutes' time. Right, let me just get back to the tweets briefly. Des was on to say, I wonder what they have on Jeremy Corbyn then, the leader of the Labour Party, in terms of compromising them. Martin Noak says they are all compromised, but completely stupid because like any Hollywood movie, they will also be expendable in the end. And he's absolutely right about that. Sean McDonald says, Richie, does Jim have a thought on the Zionist roots to this global central government or New World Order being inherent or selected to lead the march? What do you think about the part Zionism plays in all of this, Jim?
Well, it's an integral part, okay? And what you have to understand is that Zionism is a political movement. It is not Jewish, although many Jews are subscribed to it. And it was generally created in Russia back in the late 1800s by people of Jewish extraction, but it is not strictly Jewish. In fact, I've tried to explain this all the time. Zionism is a political movement which should be open to criticism and to close analysis. Judaism is the religion, okay? And then there is the Hebrews, which is a race, the Semite race. Interestingly enough, the Palestinians are Semites, okay? And so I usually throw everybody off when they say, well, you're an anti-Semite. And I say, no, I like Arabs.
Yeah.
That throws them, okay? Now, I'm the first to admit that I don't think it's proper to discriminate against someone because of their religion or because of their race. However, I do think that a political movement should be open to criticism and close scrutiny. And so I think we need to look at Zionism very closely, because it's been behind, you go back to the transfer agreement with the Nazis, where they were trying to force people out of Germany to go to Palestine to support the Zionist agenda, and in the process taking all their possessions and enriching both sides. Then you get to the Zionism that created Israel, the Balfour Declaration, which we're all familiar with, which signaled the British Empire's willingness to create a Jewish state in Palestine, was actually a response to a letter to Balfour, the British Prime Minister, from one of the Rothschilds. And the Rothschilds were the first to build a pipeline and a central bank in Israel. Israel is the Rothschilds, and the Rothschilds are Ashkenazi Jews. That means they come from Eastern Europe and even further east, probably from the ancient Khazarian Empire, which means, which in the Khazarian Empire, the king proclaimed that they would become Jewish, just like in the Roman Empire, Constantine declared that they would all become Christians. And so they are not, they have no connection to Palestine, but they have subscribed to the Jewish religion, which is fine, but they have no connection to Palestine. And so it's really an amazing situation that the people who are living in Palestine or in Israel today, who are Semites and can track their history all the way back to the biblical times, they are cousins to the Palestinian Arabs, who are also Semites, and both of them trace their heritage back to the biblical prophet Abraham. So they're basically cousins. And yet there they are fighting tooth and toenail over there, probably to the great satisfaction of the Rothschilds.
Of course, the manipulation, Jim. It's so plain to see when you can finally see it, when it opens up in front of your eyes. It's amazing. 22 minutes to the top of the hour. Ali with an I is listening in Austin in Texas, Jim. So probably very close to where you are. I've seen Jim in the distance.
Not too close. Texas is a big place.
It's a big place, yeah.
Yeah, it'll take you a better part of a day to go from where I live to Austin.
To Austin, yeah, of course it would, Jim. Yeah, you can fit the United Kingdom probably, I think, 15 times into Texas, something like that.
Speaking of that, hey, Richie, I saw somebody had taken the outline contour map of Texas and laid it over Western Europe, and it just about encompasses all of Western Europe, a little bit of the British Isles and into Spain and all the way Germany, France, and the Low Countries. They're all, that's Texas.
Massive, Jim, isn't it? I mean, I traveled in the United States before, but I never traveled in the South. I stayed in Yankee Land. I was in New York.
Come visit God's country sometime, because it's great. But to give you some idea of the size of Texas, from the Louisiana-Texas border to the western tip of Texas at El Paso is almost equidistance between El Paso and Los Angeles.
Wow, Jim. It's an ambition of mine. I mean, we've been chatting on the radio now since 2008. And it's about time that we met up. I hope that you'll be travelling in Europe on a tour or promoting your book at some stage in the future. And I'll be hosting you here. There's no doubt about that. But I want to mention Ali's comment. It's a long email, actually. She first of all says, happy St. Patrick's Day to you both. She says, Jim Mars, M-A-R-R-S. There's got to be some Irish there, she says. I'm not sure about that. Jim will tell us in a second. But she asks me to ask you, are you a spiritual man, Jim? Do you believe, like she believes, that ultimately we're all pure energy, and that in the other world or the spirit world or whatever, and she goes into it's a 5-paragraph email. Do you believe that there are entities there doing things or working on our behalf, helping us from the other side? That's an interesting question. I don't think we've ever gotten into the metaphysical, you and I, before, like that anyway.
Oh, not really. That's because as a journalist, I generally try to stick to the mundane material world. But in answer to her question, I do consider myself a spiritual person. Okay, because I definitely understand that there is a spiritual aspect to our lives. Okay, now that if you come at it from a religious, paranormal, thing, then you would call this spirits. But the material-minded, the scientists could say, well, it's electromagnetic energy, because I think what you read there, I think she understands what I do, that the entire universe, I mean, everything is nothing but energy. We live in a energized universe that's nothing but energy, but the energy in certain places becomes very condensed and it becomes matter. Now, once it becomes matter, then you come under certain laws of matter, okay? Equal opposite attraction, blah, blah, blah. So, but the thing is, well, let me put it this way, Richie. Science today, medical science, is advanced enough that they could recreate your body. They could get flesh and blood and bone, and they could put together a body that would be just like Richie Allen. The problem is they cannot activate it or energize it to make it you. Because the thing that's really you, is not the meat sack that you inhabit. It's the energy that spins around. And, some of the New Agers call it the aura, okay, whatever you want to call it. And this has been scientifically proven that we are all surrounded, our bodies are surrounded by an electromagnetic field. And this is why we get feelings a lot of times. You go into a room and you get a bad feeling, or you go in a room, you get a good feeling. It's because the energy is intermingling and connecting. And so, yes, there is an energy aspect of life, or spiritual, if you want to call it that. And it's very real, and it's really there. In fact, for the people who say, well, I don't know, you can't prove that. You can't, it's like the people say God, you can't prove there's a God, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, how about this? I think everyone who's listening is stop and think, have you ever loved someone or loved something? Maybe you loved your pet dog. Maybe you loved your mother. Maybe you loved your sweetheart, male or female. Okay, then you understand that love is very, very real. But can you put love in a bottle? Can you put it under a microscope? No. You can't see it, you can't hold it, you can't feel it, but it is very real. And folks, we live in a universe that is material and spiritual, and they're both very real. And yes, in the spiritual realm, there are entities, conscious energy that may be beneficent towards us and may have good will towards us, may even help us do stuff, like maybe you're about to step out in the street and get hit by a car, and you suddenly have this little thought that, oh, wait, I better stop, I better look around. Maybe that's somebody trying to protect you. But then on the other hand, there's probably also negative energy out there, and negative entities who probably don't want what is best for you. So you need to be aware of that too, so that you can sidestep them and avoid that.
Brilliant, Jim. And a number of people, while you are saying that, I've had an email and a tweet saying that one of the reasons they target our pineal gland with, they tried to calcify our pineal gland apparently through geoengineering and stuff like that, is because that's where we are more open to the metaphysical. That's really interesting.
That's the focal point for bringing in and sending out the energy.
Isn't that incredible, Jim? Some years ago, I would have thought so much of this was ridiculous, and I wouldn't even be open-minded to it. But I'm glad that things have changed for me, and I begin to understand it. Just before we've got about 5 minutes before we wrap up. I can't not mention again, by the way, jimmars.com. Get onto Jim's website. Jim's books are there. Population Control, Trillion Dollar Conspiracy, Our Occulted History, Alien Agenda, which remains the best-selling book of all time about ufology and about the study of our interaction with other worldly aliens and crafts. It's fantastic, by the way, folks. Crossfire, all of that is there. Jim, talk to us for a couple of minutes about the transhumanist agenda, which I know is a source of, and has been a source of great interest for you and for David Icke. Their attempts to morph technology with our bodies more and more and more in order to control us. How serious is this?
Well, that's funny you asked me that, coming on the heels of me talking about spiritualism, because the transhumanist movement and idea is to try to lead us away from any spiritual involvement. It's trying to say that, we're God and we can do what we want to do. And you know what? That sounds suspiciously like the agenda of the Illuminati. all right, who said that, we're the sum total of everything and we can make our own decisions. In fact, one of their mottos was very similar to Aleister Crowley's motto about do as thou wilt is the whole of the law. In other words, there is no law. You just do whatever you want to do. Well, boy, wouldn't we have a fine world if everybody truly practiced that, you like your neighbor's car, steal it. You like your neighbor's wife, take her, No, we can't live like that. There has to be a higher purpose. Of course, with any spiritual energy, there's positive, there's negative, but it's still energy and it's still powerful. And that's why there are evil, sinister forces go in the world that can draw power from the negative energy.
And they're going out. The transhumanist agenda is about that.
Yes.
Yeah. David's most recent book, Phantom Self, gets really into that with a chapter called Transphantomism. And it's an all-out assault, Jim. And David describes it like a grid, so everything is connected. So, smart television, smart
That's true.
technology.
Everything is connected, and since the whole universe is energy, as we know from our use and experience with energy, there's always a positive and a negative. Okay, and this is it's that dynamic that creates tension that makes up the universe, makes everything happen. So as energy beings, we can either lean towards the positive side of the energy, or we can lean towards the negative side of the energy. I'll give you a good example. Let's say that you're feeling down. And you're feeling, you're really down, and you're kind of depressed, and your friend, your roommate, your spouse says, "Let's go to a party." I don't want to go to a party. I don't feel up to partying, but they drag you along. And you get to the party. Well, you get in the party, and all of a sudden you meet some people some of your friends. There's good people there, and there's some music, and the whole atmosphere is party time. It's getting good, and what happens? You get to feeling better. Okay, if you give into it, if you accept that energy and go towards that energy, pretty soon you're going to be feeling good too. And we know this happens because it's called brainwave entrainment. The same thing is if you take a tuning fork with the the chord of C, and you twang it, and then you hold another tuning fork that you haven't hit up next to that one, pretty soon it's going to be vibrating to C, just like the first one. Our energy, tends towards like energy. And so if you're feeling down and depressed, do something to cheer yourself up. Read a good, fun book, look at a good movie or TV show, or better yet, get around some friends that are having a good time, and you're going to find that your energy level goes right on up there. So we can change the way we do things, and we can change the way that we feel about things.
Jim, that's brilliant. I want to mention this just before we let you go, and thanks for putting down the pen. I know you're using a computer, obviously, but thanks for stopping to talk to us today, because it's been 5 or 6 months since we last spoke to you. It's been too long. Listen, I don't do, ass kissing. I do say nice things about you and one or two other people, but it's not ass kissing. I mean it. A View from Mars, when you record it, it's absolutely brilliant. It really is brilliant, and it's fresh and it's insightful. David does a weekly video cast for davidicke.com, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes, and it's great, and it's a weekly thing, goes on davidicke.com. We miss A View from Mars. Now, I know you're up to your absolute tonsils at the moment with the book. My proposal is this, and this might be a bit cheeky saying this to you live on air, but you don't have to go for this. When the book is published and it's done, we would be delighted to record you from here. The technology is so great now, you don't have to move anywhere. And we'll record and enhance using audio equipment and put whatever you want in there. Your View from Mars, if you wanted to do those once a week or twice a month or whatever, and we'd be delighted to play them on Fab Radio 2 here on davidicke.com. to our pretty big audience. Now, you don't need an audience, Jim, because there's nobody better known than you. But if you wanted to do that, if that's something you wanted to think about, we'd be delighted to facilitate it for as long as you wanted to do it.
Well, that's a great offer, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And I'd add that I really do enjoy having some sort of radio program where I can interview people and I can interact with people and, have callers. I think that's great. I enjoy getting callers and talking with people. But right now, I'm like everybody else. I have bills to pay.
Of course.
And the only way I seem to be able to pay them is by writing books. And when I'm writing books, when you're researching and writing and, it unfortunately pretty much takes up all my time.
Of course it
does.
But
I'll tell you what, talk to me off air sometime and we'll discuss this. I think that would be a wonderful idea if we can figure out how to make it all work.
Yeah, later in the year, we've got the facility that I can record you interviewing anybody in the world from where you are. Right. It can all be done very easily. I would be doing it. So you wouldn't be dealing with any idiots. You'd be dealing with me. As I said, it's a bit cheeky to throw that at you on live air, but it's a brilliant show, mate. And you should still do it. Of course, the book is important, but later on in the year, we can chat about that. And it's always there for you. We'll provide the platform for you, because I know you've had one or two unreliable people. We're not unreliable. We'll do it for you. In the meantime, folks, go to jimmars.com. If you haven't read Jim's books, read them. If you can't afford to buy one of Jim's books, I guarantee you they'll be in your library. Go to your local library and read one of Jim's books, and read one soon. Mate, I love you. I love talking to you. Look after yourself. Thanks for coming on again, and Godspeed with the writing of the book.
Thank you, Richie. Adios.
Bye for now. The great Jim Mars on the line to us from his home in Texas. What a special man.